you have stuff you do together, but you should also be able to be in the same room, doing your own thing. You can just turn and look at the person and then you will both smile. That is love, because you're not expecting something from the other person, but being in each other's vicinity makes you feel something.
Hi Varun, welcome to Dishcoveries.
Thanks for having me. Excited to, or intrigued to know what you're going to talk to me about.
We are going to talk to you about a lot of things related to love, and we'll just keep it fluid. We'll go wherever you want.
Yeah.
I was very keen on having you as a guest because I've been really enjoying your episodes on Take a Pause. And I was wondering, in this journey of talking to so many people in order to educate yourself on how to better yourself and lead a meaningful life, how has your perspective on self-love evolved?
I'm a critical person when it comes to talking about myself. I'm also someone who likes to make fun of myself. It's a defense mechanism. So I do a lot of that, which I'm told is not something you should do too much of, but I still do it. Which is why I really like, I remember watching Friends and I would look at Chandler and I get that. That's exactly what I do. I feel that the last 4-5 years for me have been a process of understanding my own mind. And it happened at a point when, you kind of go through this cycle where the world tells you, okay, you got to, something you do professionally, something you kind of do for your life. When you come to a point and you will find a balance there. And I'd built a business that had kind of scaled to a certain level, had been married for about 5 years, had just had a kid. So everything was said there, but I still hadn't figured out my own thing. If that's, I can't think of more technical or better sounding, but I couldn't find out
what identity, perhaps.
Yeah, what was it that I really want to do, and I could never understand this word purpose, because I'm like, it feels too heavy, right? What is your purpose? I always like the word curiosity over purpose. I think there are many things you're curious about, and I've always been this curious person trying to go down rabbit holes and figure things out. So, one day I'll talk to someone about music, the other day I'll talk to someone about watches, and I'll go down that and understand how things are made, what are stories behind it. And I did that with mental health primarily because I was going through a process of really understanding how I was going to evolve. I was also trying to figure out how to be a father. Also had to kind of figure out, you're in a marriage, but at some point in time you got to sit. I think we both sat down and said we want to understand each other as people. We also want to understand ourselves individually. And so I started going to therapy for a random reason, but that happened simultaneously. I went to therapy because I've been telling people I have ADHD my entire life. And I said, okay, at some point it'll be a fraud if you don't actually check with the certified person because I don't have attention. So I went to my therapist and she said, you don't have ADHD. I have a case of autonomy, which is that if you tell me to go from A to B, I don't have a problem. If you tell me how to go from A to B, my mind just kind of it needs to find its own way to the destination. You can't tell me how to go to the destination. So it's a reflex action. It's like, oh, don't tell me how to do something. So I was curious. So I started reading up about it. And I started reading about the mind and then went down psychology and neuroscience and creativity. I didn't consider myself creative till I was 36. I am 40 now. Because I'd always look at operations. I was a producer. I wasn't a director. And at some point, the podcast had also just happened. This going into my own mind kind of happened. And that kind of led me to now where Take a Pause for me is a way for me to say, this is what I'm learning constantly and I'm sharing it there. And I want to tap into people's minds and understand from them as well. So, very long answer to your simple question, but...
Lovely. So, talk to me more about how this diagnosis made you feel. Did it put a lot of things in perspective for you?
It does. It also, there is a problem where it can also confuse you because you can very easily confuse yourself. You can attribute every single thing you do to, okay, is this a mental thing? You can overanalyze it. You can go Dr. Google on it and just literally go down that, read every article, understand everything. But it gives you perspective on what makes you tick. And it makes you more secure as a person. And that's been my attempt. I'm saying, can I be more secure about things that I enjoy? That I want to talk about, things that I want to do, and see if that can actually be done the way it has to and still kind of fit into my life. I do multiple podcasts, I've written a book, I do content, I work in a business, but I also want to have a certain amount of time every day for myself. I want to have a certain amount of time for family, certain amount of time to go to the gym, stuff like that, which I don't want to compromise on. So it's that you got to find a way to balance things together, because I feel that's what we don't talk about enough. We talk about how could I optimize life, how do I perform better, but like, how do you find balance? I think that's been the most interesting thing for me to learn, because I had zero balance before. I was just all into everything 24/7 person, and now I'm like kind of pause and figure it out.
And what have your learnings been from balance, and what is something we can learn from you?
This year, I read this book called 4,000 Weeks, which I think everybody should read. It talks about the fact that the average human life is 4,000 weeks, right? Which feels small if you think in context. And we all talk about time management, how do you do more? And balance becomes like, how do you fit in more into your day? And what Oliver Burkeman, who wrote it, says is that you need to figure out how to use your time well, not use your time a lot more than you need to. Because it's a finite resource, it's going away. So do you need to do this right now? And what are you using it for? Just questions like that, which you don't normally ask ourselves. That's what he kind of channels, and that's been my balance. My balance is literally saying there's time in every day that you need to have for work, for family and friends, and there's time for self. So I block my day out in that sense. It's almost like levels of control, right? Time for yourself is what you have the most control over, if you think about it. You can kind of figure that one out. Also, the thing you compromise the most because you can control it the most. Family and friends, flexibility there to a certain level, but work you most times don't have flexibility with. So I look at it, so I do my top and bottom of the day for self, because that's the time everyone's gone to sleep or not woken up. And then family, and then work. That just gives me balance. And it doesn't have to be exactly that way. It doesn't have to be, oh, have I spent 2 exact hours with my daughter every day? Not necessarily. Could be half an hour. For that half an hour, am I fully in there? So it's that. It's also the quality of how you do it. So every week I sit down saying, have I balanced it out? And then I've worked with a business coach because I wanted to answer the purpose question. She had an interesting insight saying that you can't have as an individual one purpose in life. You have multiple, because you can't just do, like, you're not there for like one track. Yeah. So what we came down to was, okay, there are 5 different purposes that I could bring out for myself. And some people might have 3, some people might have more. And that actually split exactly like this. There's some stuff that was connected to work, some stuff that was very individual. Like one of my purposes is that I need to have time that I spend with myself. That is one of my purposes, because that gives me energy. I need to be away from people from time to time to be able to get the energy when I'm with people. And I feel we have to ask some of these fundamental questions of saying, what is giving you energy when you're doing something, and what is taking away energy from you? And you need to put that down on paper and then think about it. Sounds very like basic, but you don't have to complicate it. I mean, doesn't have to be deep thought in that sense, but you got to just put down saying, what are things that make you feel a certain way? What are things that make you just enjoy doing it? And I made a list of things I want to do, which I think might give me that feeling. And one of those things was I always wanted to learn how to surf. We'd gone for a trip to the Maldives, and I purposely chose a resort which had a surf school. And I would say I am at base level beginner stage. Fall off the board most times very quickly. I think few times, there are a few seconds I was on, I felt like that. But I don't think I'm doing it to become a pro surfer. I'm doing it because I enjoy that process of just that one instant when you're on that board, when you're on the wave. It's for that feeling you get. And so you got to find all those things you do in life. It could be just making your coffee. Like for me, rubbing my dog's belly is one of my... I was telling her this is one of my purposes in life. I need to rub that belly every day. It's like therapy. So I feel that we need to note down those things. Not just the big things, the small things. I feel that's what we disregard the most.
Interesting. And I can imagine that it must be of great importance to find activities that you like, and just in order to retain your individuality, because you yourself have so many roles that you play. You're a CEO, you're a father, you also do podcasts. So I'm assuming that this must really help you figure out who Varun is as a person as well.
At some point, I've stopped trying to figure out who I am. And I feel I've always hated that whole box thing, right? We'll say, no, don't put me in a box. I don't know what box to put myself in most times, which I think is a good place to be. You can leave some things, you don't have to figure everything else out. But this stuff really helps me understand how to react and understand why I react a certain way for certain things. It helps me deal with, like, for instance, when you have a 5-year-old at home and she reacts to something that happens a certain way, obviously. And kids at a certain age have a lot more emotion that comes out. So your instinct might be to say, just like push it down or just tell it, no, don't do it, or like figure it out. But if you learn that level of, okay, she's reacting this way because something triggered it. So I sit with her and say, think about why it started, why you felt angry in the first place. Track it back to that. And while the complexity of it might not sit in with someone who's just 5, but that does calm someone down. And I find that to be something it's really helped me. I think across the board, even at work for me, don't aggravate a situation, calm the situation down, has always been my thing, weirdly enough. Even if I'm angry with someone, if I say something to them, I'll take them aside and this is why I said this to you. Let me explain myself. And so I've kind of now channeling that across every part of my life.
And have you ever noticed that in the process of parenting your daughter, you've also started to reparent yourself?
I guess that happens naturally if you are involved as a parent. I always wanted to be very hands-on. I also have an innate need to handle everything dealing with poop. So I am prime diaper changer, prime dog poop picker. We have 2 dogs at home as well. So every morning at 6 a.m., both my dogs wake me up. They'll scratch me, make sure I wake up, because they want their morning biscuit. I go out and I realize 1 or 2 of them, either of them, have peed on the mat which we leave over there. So my day starts with the cleanup, right? And I'm like, it's like my kids tell me in the morning that this is your base level. This is where you start. You don't start the day saying, oh my God, you're doing so many things, you're so cool. No, you are cleaning pee and poop. The first thing you do. I think that's a great place to start because you can only go upwards from there, right? And I feel that it teaches you that level of, I think humility is too hard for a word. I think it just makes you start off on a slightly easier wicket. Being a parent also teaches you patience, which is anyway, I think all parents need patience. So teach you how to look at someone evolving and thinking of your actions and how they're going to affect. Me and my wife talk about how that no matter what we might do as parents, our kids will talk about us in therapy, right? We are going to be a prime front and center spotlight, which is fine because I think every person who goes to therapy talks about their parents. Let's be honest. I don't think anybody who goes there doesn't talk about it. Parents do feature in that. But the point is, as long as you feel you've done right by what you know, and you also explained yourself enough. I think I explained myself a lot more after I became a parent than I ever did. Because every action I explain. Okay, this is why I said this. This is why this happened. This is why you have to do this. Because kids always ask why. So there's a lot of whys that I answer.
Nice. So this was a question we picked up in the previous episode that we filmed. Was someone from the crew asked if what would the world look like if all parents went to therapy? What do you think your perspective on that?
I feel it will be pretty much the same, but I feel we'll be a little more aware. We'll listen a little more and be stern a little less. And then you'll go back and talk about, do I need to be more stern? Do I need to? So it'll always flip around in that sense. I don't think it'll change too much. I think human beings don't, in a sense, change as much. They just become more and more aware. I think we'll be more aware as people and as parents. You will have that spike and you will kind of react. But therapy will teach you to also explain yourself, to also understand why, all that stuff. And you'll also understand how you as an individual function. I feel being a parent kind of makes you think about yourself because you see yourself in your kids a lot. Like my daughter has so many traits of mine and I'm like, I know I do this a lot. Now I see the problem, right? So I feel it makes you more aware.
And how has your perspective on familial love changed after becoming a father?
So there are 2 parts to this, right? One is even how a relationship kind of functions as 2 individuals. And me and my wife Pooja, we call it a partnership. Because there are some things which I do, there's some things which she does, and there's some things we do together. As a couple, when a kid gets added in, there are a bunch of things we do for the kid together, again individually and all that stuff. So I feel love kind of comes in different ways depending on the dynamic. So for instance, everybody's surprised that I'm the stern parent. Right.
Are you surprised by that as well?
I'm very surprised that I'm the stern parent. But I won't react. Like kids can cry in front of me, throw a tantrum, anything. I will just not react. Like, are you done? Okay, now let's do something. Or I can literally say, no, you're not doing this and stand my ground. And I feel that Pooja is the more organized person. Pooja is the more structured person. I'm the slightly floopier one at home. So everyone assumed that she would become, but she's actually the softer one. So when I look at the structure of love in our house, it's things you put in your day, which you do together, which drive that love and that feeling of love. Like, me and my daughter do this thing every morning called Hello World. I take her to the balcony and we say hello to the world. It's a random thing, whatever we come up with or rather comes into my mind on the fly. And that's almost like a driver of what we start our day together in that sense, and I don't like giving that up. Except on weekends and both of us sleep in and we forget about it. So for me, that's a trigger, right? It's a trigger for something which we do together. And that drives that feeling in there. And some of those things got built in because for the first 6 months of being a father, you don't understand what love is as a parent. And I feel that mothers get it a lot more naturally because I sensed that. Like in the first 3-6 months, you're trying to figure out what your relationship is like. First 3 months, you're trying to keep the kid alive, in a sense. Because kids aren't necessarily like, they're waking up, they again, I'm going to mention poop too many times, guys. I'm just like letting you. You just do diaper changes, you're feeding, you're putting them to sleep. That's all you're doing. But at some point, I started reacting to things. And so once Leia started reacting to things with me is when I started building a relationship. So I started to build things I could do with her. Like I would make playlists for her. I would play, because I used to do nights and I would play music for her every night and see, okay, what part makes her sleep, what song. Weirdly, George Michael made her sleep, which I never understood why. And even Metallica, for some very random reason. My son now, who we've just had, sleeps really well to Jimi Hendrix, but wakes up because my daughter decides to play O and Ma, which I'm like, there is no way he's not going to wake up with that. So I started to build some of those things with her. So there's things which you do together. It could be as stupid as like, she and I watch Instagram Reels together. She calls them big people videos, right? So we sit and watch that, and my entire algo is now like, I think it's very PG-13, thankfully, because of that. So we do that stuff together. So we build that stuff in there, and similarly, you build that stuff with your partner. Like me and Pooja have a bunch of things we do together. Could just be around food. We just like I read a lot more books than she does, and so I'll end up sending her screenshots of stuff which kind of resonate with me. And that's something that happens through the day. Like she will send me stuff, I will send her stuff. Very clear, it's something which kind of resonates. It's our thing. That's like an entire part of our life. So we share stuff which gave us some form of meaning inside. Going back to that whole point of balance, that you have stuff you do together, but you should also be able to be in the same room, doing your own thing. But you can just turn and look at the person and then you will both smile. That is love, because you're not expecting something from the other person, but being in each other's vicinity makes you feel something. And that's what I've gotten from the whole family. Because we have a full house. We have 2 kids, 2 dogs, there's the 2 of us. So there's a lot happening always. But it's just that.
I'm very curious about your dogs. Are you the sort of dog parent who's obsessed with their dogs and like refers to them as their child?
So I have to give context. My grandmother had 13 dogs when I was growing up.
Wow.
She had 12 Dachshunds and 1 Pomeranian. I don't understand why there was 1 Pomeranian. It could have just been 13 Dachshunds, but that's what she had. And they were all like interesting characters, right? I think she named them after utensils falling down because they were named Dinky, Pinky, Chinky, like that. Stuff like that. And they would roam around the house. And I come from a family of doctors. So the hospital was the ground floor and we would live on top. So it was never my dog's going to be in my bed with me kind of a relationship. The dogs are there. They're part of the environment. Later on, when I had my own dog at some level when I was a little older, and then she passed very quickly. I think she passed away in 3 years because she got an infection and passed away. So I didn't again have a dog for a long time. When I met Pooja had her older dog, Trip. She'd had him for a year. And one of the things that I would say that brought us together, I think it was an interesting dynamic where Trip was generally very, not very friendly with everybody he met. And the first time he met me, he wouldn't stop humping my leg. So I'm like, okay, he really likes me then. I said that works. I'm going to get so rogered for putting the story everywhere, but it's fine. And actually, it's in my book, so it's fine. It's fine. It's in the book. And he and I were like, I would sleep and he'd come and sleep on my feet. I would sleep on the floor and he would sleep on my feet. And at some point in time, he would sleep on our bed. Then we got our second one, which is Lulu, and Lulu sleeps on the bed as well. And so eventually when we had our daughter, I'm like, okay, we have to move someone off the bed. So we got him on bed. So in our house, everybody sleeps in the same room right now because that's our thing. But I'm not overtly obsessive. I call them my children because they behave like my children. I feel dogs have a very interesting difference from how we look at human beings, is that level of delight to see you no human being will ever be that delighted. Like, I would have gone to the elevator to send someone off and come back home. My dogs are so excited. I'm back. The tails are wagging. You can see all of that. And they're both tiny. They're tiny Shih Tzus. I feel that's like they teach you like how to actually like show like that amount of love and excitement for the most random things.
Yeah, I do believe that the love that dogs show us is the most unconditional and pure there could.
It's the purest thing. Which is why I never get cats. But that's because I just don't get cats. But I find cats to be that slightly more aloof character. Okay, fine, you're here, human. It's like that vibe is what I've always gotten from cats. But
this is gonna trigger all the cat people.
No offense to cat people. My sister has cats. She's like, I'm mean to cats. But I never get that kind of. I've never felt that kind of love with the cat. Like, I'll be sleeping at night and Zulu will kind of walk and she'll plop her head on my foot as like her headrest. So I don't feel like moving my foot. She eventually do kick her off at some point of time. Like, I see Trip, he'll walk out. He sunbathes for whatever reason. He'll go into the balcony, he'll lie down there. He's 11 years old. He's very old now. I'm like, this guy's chilling in the balcony. He's enjoying that part. He'll go have a biscuit. I'm like, this is the life. Like, and they teach you to appreciate those things.
It would be fair to say you're not tortured by the thought of what if there's more out there.
Not as much as I used to be. Because there was a time, like, for instance, I never considered myself to be someone who will want to be, let's say, a podcaster or someone, like, I would have never imagined I'd make Instagram reels in my life, right? But now I enjoy it so much because I just enjoyed the process of kind of putting an idea out there. It's made me kind of think about it is that I would always say, what if? But now I'm like, can I just try it, see if it sticks? And if it doesn't stick, I don't mind it not being a thing. So I will dabble with multiple things. Like, I might tomorrow buy ukulele and decide to start learning it because I've always wanted to learn. I'm like, I've always kept that in the back burner. But you shouldn't overthink, and I'm a serial overthinker. Overthink all the things you want to do and just sit in that overthinking process. Try it, and oftentimes you realize the stuff you're obsessing over so much is actually not something you really want to do. You just think it seems cool to do. Like, I thought building a business would be cool, and it was cool. It's the best experience of my life to kind of have built Glitch out. But did I enjoy being a corporate person? Beyond a point, I realized no. I was telling myself that is what will be great for me because, you come to a certain level, you can be this person who's moving through the corporate ladder. But when I sat down and said, okay, am I just doing this because I think it's an opportunity that's there for me? Or am I doing it because I actually want to do it? And I realized that maybe I didn't necessarily want to do it. And so sometimes you got to kind of ask yourself that question. It's like when I do podcasts, right? I'm like, am I doing this podcast because I enjoy doing it? Or it's giving me some other value? Like, it's giving me reach, it's giving me certain level of monetization, etc. Or am I doing it because I think it's just cool to do? And there's nothing wrong with just cool to do, just that cool to do doesn't stick for too long. At some point that becomes not so cool to do. And you got to ask yourself those questions. And as long as you keep asking those questions, you feel less FOMO. Yeah. But I think our FOMO comes, oh, that person's doing that. Why don't I do that? Someone has like a podcast that goes out one episode a day. Yeah. I've tried that. Worst idea ever. But you should try it. You'll realize how much you didn't want to actually do it. You'll fail at it or you'll just fall out of love with it and then you'll move ahead.
What I find really interesting is how open you are to trying many different things. I feel like it becomes even more difficult as you age to be open to trying new things. How is that not a daunting process for you? And I guess this is what much of your book is about.
Here's my process about trying new things, right? Is that I always stopped myself from trying many things because I felt like I will fail, I'll not be good at it. I also felt I'll be very judged. But weirdly enough, and I call it my midlife crisis, I said that post my mid-30s, I just said, it's okay, I'll try it. People will laugh, it's fine. Like, I had terrible fashion choices as a kid, right? I wore the cool chain to school, bad idea, from Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And I changed it to Loco for some reason because I thought that'll even be cooler, but it's not. And that would obviously, when people would react a certain way and then you would care about that, and so you suddenly go in the opposite direction, only wear, let's say, black t-shirts then. Suddenly gone from like fluorescent shirts to black t-shirt, go the other extreme. But I feel that if you're saying, I'm doing this because I want to try it out, I don't necessarily care about the judgment. I want critique or someone to critique what I'm doing. I feel that's a better way to go. So whenever I try something, I have every piece of content, I have someone who gives me perspective. Could be a friend, could be someone who's commented, could be someone who's DM me or something. And I learn from that. When someone says, I didn't like this, or if I get random hate, I'm like, why? And I think a why is often very disarming, because if a person's coming in trying to be brutal, and you ask them why, oftentimes they don't know why. It's just like they're putting something out there. And that also frees you from feeling judged, because I'm like, now the ball's in your court. You tell me why, if you can't tell me why. And so I've engaged sometimes with people who don't agree with my thoughts, and I'll have that chat online. And that's let me try more things again and again. But again, you got to try in steps. Like I didn't suddenly say, okay, I want to do start off in 2018 saying, okay, I will do 3 podcasts. I will do 1 Instagram reel a day. I will do a YouTube channel. I will write a book. I didn't want to do all those things at one shot. I did one, which was the podcast, which is not even video. Yeah. And so that gave me the confidence to say, 1 second, I can do this. No one's judging my voice. They don't have to see my face. Then it's okay, bring a camera into that room. Then it's okay, maybe I can write a newsletter. When you start writing a newsletter, then someone said, can you write a book? You got to take those small steps and you kind of add a little bit more confidence. And the more confidence you kind of build in yourself, you worry about judgment a little less as well.
You said that every time you try something new, you try to get perspectives from some trusted few people. How important is it for you that your partner genuinely enjoys what you do? Say, for instance, like the book you've written. How important is it that your spouse is a big fan of your work?
There needs to be a certain level of, okay, I respect what you do, I enjoy parts of what you do, but I don't have to consume and love everything that you do. Because I feel that's overkill at some level. Like I remember when I was writing the book, I would make Pooja read certain parts of the book, which I knew would resonate with her. And so she's actually read parts of the book much before the book came out. But I won't go to her saying start to end, tell me your notes. I'll give her specific things. And there's certain things we enjoy together. It's like both of us enjoy food. So when we go for a meal, that's what we'll talk about. We'll really vibe on that. But again, I'm like South Indian, so I like the stuff spicy. I want to have my pickle with my khana. She loves saucier food in that sense. So we have things we enjoy, but we don't necessarily have to enjoy the same things. So as long as there's respect for what each of us does, I think that's more important. I don't think it has to be that you have to enjoy everything together. Like she's not watching KGF 2-3 times like me, because I'm just watching a guy walk. Yeah. That's what he does. Whole movie, he just walks. But he walks really well. That's my logic on KGF.
But things are a little different when it is your art that they are consuming, right? Like you would take that more personally.
I would, but what I also don't expect is that because you and I are connected together as a relationship doesn't mean you need to love everything I do. And a lot of the stuff I'm creating might not even be for her or for my friends. I have very close friends who make a lot of fun of me. Someone called me Srishi Duggirala the other day. I'm like, please do not call me that. Because I'm like, don't put me in that category, because I think that's another level of spiritual upliftment. I said, I'm just sharing what I know. But I think you need that as well. You need to have people who kind of bring you down to size and kind of teach you that, okay, I don't consume or I don't like what you are doing, but I respect what it's done for you. I respect what it's helped you evolve into. So I go a little deeper onto that front than to kind of saying you need to love everything I do, not necessarily. Like a lot of the content I do, I would say the people closest to me, some of them like some things, some of them like some things. Like both my mother and my mother-in-law consume my content, watch my YouTube videos, and they'll give me points of what they liked and didn't like. But are they consuming everything? Not necessarily. And I don't think I can expect that of them as well. But yeah, so as long as I enjoy it. My main point is that, do I enjoy it? Then I'm good with that.
Talking about friendships, how much have your platonic relationships changed post-marriage or even after becoming a father?
So I have a group of friends since college. We all came to Bombay together from film school, and we still hang out together. I need to have that group around me at least once a month, which now becomes once every month and a half. I think the regularity of those catch-ups kind of change once you get married, have a kid and all that stuff. We're also at different stages in our own lives, but we do that. But I feel you got to find different sets of friends to do different things with. Like I have close friends who are parents. You can have like 6 screaming kids running around. All of us will have blocked that noise up. We can have a great evening together. But you get the friends who don't have kids into that room, they will not understand the chaos. So the learning has been that you actually build multiple circles of friends. Sometimes you bring them all together. Sometimes you enjoy them differently. And I feel that has been my big learning as I've progressed. But I feel that circle can always be very small. I feel I had a tendency, I would say, in my 20s to want to make that circle very big. Let's have as many friends. Like in every pin code, you need to have a set of friends to kind of hang out with. This to be my thing. Now that circle is so small because I'm like, these are people I can totally, in a almost like a safe, no judgment space, be with and just talk about, and also have conversations about things beyond just like you thinking about what you're saying before you're saying it. I feel that's been the learning about friendship, because I feel with friendship, as you get older, a lot of your friendships become transactional friendships. Because you're kind of looking at, okay, this person's my friend because at some point there is something that I'm going to do for him or her, or which they're going to do for me, and which is one of the reasons why we are friends. I'm not taking away from those friendships, but I feel there is a connection there. I think it happens more like professional friendships, for instance, or people you meet through work. But you also will have some friendships where it's not about a transaction. It's just about hanging out. It's about doing stuff with
you. Does that make that any less of a friendship?
It makes it lesser from the lens of that you're still not as open as you would be. You're still a little bit more on guard. And you do that subliminally. I don't think it's a hardcore, like, in some cases you are, but I think in most cases it just happens in the background. You won't suddenly talk about, okay, this is what's really going on in my head or going on in my life. You also try to state yourself in a slightly better light.
Have you thought that you have to reintroduce yourself to your friends, that they have to reintroduce themselves as you keep evolving through life?
I guess in some cases, yes, if you are reconnecting in longer gaps. But sometimes I feel you also explain yourself a little bit. Like I've had to kind of explain who I am today versus who I was 5 years ago. Sometimes to kind of say, okay, this is why I'm doing this. And I think you do that more because you don't want them to get the wrong idea or hear it from someone else. It's like, as I went down this journey of understanding how to develop myself and understand my mind, what I've explained to some of them is, I'm not doing this because I want to become this content creator who's focused on this. But I'm like, I have found a way to channel what I've learned, put it out there into the world, and that helps me learn more and gives me more value. It's like I was talking to a friend the other day, and like, he's talking to me about how he gets anxiety before a presentation. And I'd watched something about what Navy SEALs do as a breathing technique right before they go in for a mission. And I just messaged him that. And he said that really worked. Now, sometimes those things come up because you've told them that, okay, I'm trying to find these tools, I'm trying to understand these things. And that kind of also like adds another layer to that relationship.
I found this interaction very interesting because very rarely do you hear of men being vulnerable with each other. Has that been a change in these adult friendships?
Not in all cases, but I feel with some of my closest friends, it's been a push that I know I've tried to be more vulnerable, because I've always been I think pre this phase in my life, I was always a sweep it under the carpet person, right? Sweep it under the carpet, act like everything's normal. But the more I've spoken about things, the more it's led to some of my closest friends to also open up to me. Right. It doesn't happen in a group. I've seen it happen in a group a few times, but I would say it's largely something that happens one-on-one. Where whenever I've spoken about what I've learned through therapy or what I've learned through being a parent, or how I even felt, like I've spoken to a friend who just became a dad, and I told him the first 3 months are like you're in Big Boss, because it's like you're doing tasks. You don't understand why it's like Big Boss chaate hain, aap diaper change karo. Big Boss chaate, it's like that. That's what you're doing, right? I said it's a social experiment. You got to get through that, and then what unlocks is something amazing. But don't expect that on day one you're going to love your child to the moon, which you do, which weirdly actually happened. I think with the second one it happened faster because I'd been through that cycle. I understand that more. I think it starts with helping someone with something. So for me it was like, okay, you're going to be a parent. These are things I need to tell you. And so when he faced something, he would message me and we would talk about it. If I speak about something that's happened to either one of my parents, and then he or she shares something that's happened to them, I feel it's that. The expectation is, the other person will share first. I say that if you share and you normalize that fact, whoever really feels they can does that to you as well. And you should be open to that being a dialogue and not a, oh, I have the answers scenario, which I think especially with guys, that's the problem. It becomes I know what you should do. That's the worst place to be. Almost like, okay, and rather it should be, this is what I did. I want to understand what you did. I think it's happening a little bit more, but I feel the tendency is to always be that, which is that's the spot when you're like, okay, boss, I know where this is going to go.
Has becoming a father enabled you to view your parents as individuals with their own fears, anxieties, dreams, and so on?
It's helped me understand them better. So my parents had me very early, as in they got married very young, and my dad was 24, my mom was 20 when they had me. And they had been married I think they were married when my mom was 16 and he was 20. And they were kids technically when they had a kid. So when I think back on my childhood and seeing how they evolved, seeing how they are as people, I understand them now more than ever. Because I feel once you become a parent, you also see, okay, that's why you do something. That's why someone reacted that way. So I understand them a lot better now, is how I put it. But I also feel that I'm able to talk to them about why they are a certain way a lot better now than I could before. Because now they also understand that I have context. And I also see that nod when I'll do something which either of them would have done to me when I was a kid with my daughter, and they'll be like, see, you didn't agree with me when I did that.
You will understand when you become a parent.
Yeah, which is very true. In most cases, I don't think in all cases. I think also the world kind of changes, the way you parent changes, the way all those relationships work changes.
So, Varun, there are also some people in the group who would like to ask you some questions.
Yeah, so I had a question. You mentioned that like your friend needed a help once and you sent him those Navy SEALs breathing techniques, and I've been thinking about it. What were those breathing techniques?
So you take 2 continuous deep breaths, you go, you hold it and then you slowly exhale it out. It's an anxiety releasing technique. First time I did it, I was like, okay, it actually worked. It like opens you up. I don't know if it's the double breath or what it is, but a lot of the breathing ones are actually about the timing, right? Are you breathing in for like 7 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, and breathing it out in 8 seconds?
The holding of it also helps, no?
Yeah, you got it. And actually, even this double, if you can hold a little longer and then breathe out, even that also supposedly helps. But yeah, that's what I said.
So my question is, how do you deal with conflict about, like, let's say things that you're very passionate about?
So like different kinds of conflict there. If the conflict is the fact that, okay, this is something someone's passionate about, but let's say the client said no, or they want to change it. Or even if I'm passionate, my logic is simple, right? It's eventually for that client. I have a 3 times policy. It's like you push an idea through 3 times. After that, it's your money. This is what you want to do. We'll go with it. But I will state my case on the records and this is why it is a certain way. When it's with a team member who feels demotivated, that, okay, I had this idea, it's been pushed down. It's about explaining why it was pushed down a lot more. And I feel that's something that gets missed. Like my worst feedback the one is I hate the most is saying maza nahi aa raha hai, which I don't understand. I'm like, explain, right? Or it's like, something's not working. What is that something, right? The more you can explain that, everybody kind of gets it. The problem happens when you just say that the worst is the feel nahi aa raha hai, which is like, I don't even get what that is. But that's how I've always dealt with it, is try to find the explanation for that, try to explain context, and also be open to having it being two-way. It's not just like okay, that's how it's going to work. Unless it's more a process-related thing. Like, when someone once asked me saying, why can't you pay everybody differently? I'm like, no, you need to have let's say a vendor payment cycle, because it's a system. You build a system, life's easier. So I think in that stuff, it's not as much explanation because you need to kind of understand that stuff. But I feel in the creative side, it's more about understanding the nuance of why something will work in some cases and not work, why certain choices were made versus something else. And we tend to sweep past that and almost say, no, you will get it, or like, we don't have the time for it. But if you spend those extra 2 minutes just explaining that part, I feel that other person feels a lot more secure. And they understand, they kind of go ahead in a slightly better light post that.
And does something similar work for, let's say, a relationship conflict where you have to like explain to your partner about something? So do you have a similar approach, or is it something different?
No, actually, with relationships, that's the most important thing, right? Is that how open are you about what you're kind of going through, what you're feeling, why you're reacting to something a certain way. Really go like deeper into that. That's like one of the, I'd say, the cornerstones, right? But that evolves over time. You're initially not that open. It takes you time to almost build the trust that you can share more and more, right? There's this concept of the 15% rule in relationships, which is basically that you have a safe zone at the center and you have a danger zone on the outside. And there's a learning zone in between. When you start off a relationship, everything's in the safe zone. You're not telling stuff that is safe for the other person to know. Imagine you break up tomorrow, oh my God, this kind of goes out there. And the stuff you don't want to share is in the danger zone, right? But as the relationship grows and evolves, that learning zone kind of becomes smaller and your safe zone becomes larger. You got to look at it in that lens. I think there's a book called Connect, if I remember the name of the book right, where I learned this one. And that's the way you got to look at it, is that you got to share, but you don't have to share everything on day one. That's like, imagine the first day to tell about everything in your life. That's like the worst idea. I used to be that person. Either don't share anything or share everything used to be my thing. At some point in life, I learned moderation is what will help.
So finally, I would like to play a game with you. Okay. This is called Spill the Emotions. So basically, you will pick one chit and I'll pick one chit, and then on the basis of the emotion written on your chit, you can ask me a personal question and I can do the same.
Okay.
Also, like the similar colored ones are from a particular page.
I got shame.
Do you have a question for me?
What is your thought process on being shameless as a person?
I don't think I'm shameless as a person, and I think that is what is holding me back in life. I really wish I was more shameless. And I was in fact talking to my therapist, and she also mentioned this, that you need to become more shameless because you get embarrassed by very minute things very easily. It could be something as simple as filming myself. There is something that will for some reason make me feel very embarrassed, and I'll start judging myself. And her solution was that if you start having this approach of being more shameless in all aspects of your life, minute things like that will die out.
That's actually very good advice. Because I always use the word that I'm shameless very openly.
But what does being shameless mean to you?
It's about having less apprehension to do anything. That's what it means to me. Although a bit of shame is important, because you can't also, I don't think that you can go shameless extreme, but for me it's about just not worrying about being judged as much. You got to channel it in certain ways. Like for me, being shameless was like, I was this kid in the chaddi dancing in the rain, right? Every time it rained, I'd be in my VIP Frenchies out in the rain. And for me, like, that's the visual. That is like, you don't care. And you got to find a way to bring that kid back. And just kind of channel that. And so for me, it's being a kid oftentimes is me being shameless. Because kids are very shameless, which is the best. Right? So I'd want to kind of be that kid again often enough.
On that note, is there anything that you envy about your kids?
I envy how my kids get to do, how my kids actually think a lot. Because I feel that the way they're learning in school now versus maybe how we all learned in school, they're being taught about empathy. They've been taught about how to communicate. A lot of the things I've learned late 30s is what daughters learning at 4 and 5. And I envy that part. I'm like, they're starting off with skills that we actually need, but we're not really taught. And not worrying as much about a lot of the stuff that we learned in school, which we never use in our life. Like I asked her the other day, what do you want to be when you grow up? Which is a very typical cliched parent question to ask. She said, I want to be an astronaut and a pastry chef. Which for me is amazing, right? Like I would have not come up with that answer. Me as a kid, to say I want to be a drawer because I didn't know the word artist existed. So that's like progression has happened. The fact that she came up with that, and then she has the opportunity for me to say, okay, one second, maybe I can figure some place you can go learn how to make a cupcake. Or if you want to learn about space, let's download an app on the iPad and let's run through that. They have the opportunity to do those things which I didn't have as a kid because we didn't have the internet, and also I think schools were different and everything else. So I think that's what I envy the most.
Do you want to do one more?
Yes, one.
Okay. You pick one.
I got nostalgia.
I got hate. I'll begin. Have you ever truly hated anyone?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever truly... I mean, hate would be extreme. I've had bad breakups, so hate came up very heavily there. But I don't know if that hate sticks. I mean, that's kind of faded off. That's fleeting, right? I don't think I've hated anything in my life. I've not had that, thankfully. But I hate people who talk in a movie theater. Or who make chewing sounds when they eat. That's the extreme parts of my hate. Like I have literally made people get off a table and move 2 tables away because I can't deal with their chewing sound. I've gone that extreme, which is terrible of them to do, and also for me to make the move. But yeah, that's the extreme of my hate.
Do you have a question for me?
On nostalgia,
You can also answer the for
actually, I want to ask you this: what are you nostalgic about when you think of the time when you guys started off to now? What do you kind of say? Oh, I missed that part.
I think one of the things everyone tries to hold is like the innocence aspect of it, but the change is constant, and like nostalgia is something I'm like obsessed about. Like I have always used it as a weapon because I used to be very embarrassed of the fact that like I get nostalgic about anything, like textures, smells. Our first episode in Andheri East, Manav. So like you came today as a guest. Like I used to tell people, hey, if you're coming, I don't have a lift. You'll have to climb 3 floors. Like I was worried if they'll go to the washroom, if they're not able to close the tap. Like this is not my house. We were living in a much smaller house.
Yeah.
It's still like a lot of fun stuff, but you were embarrassed of it, and like those are always good stories to tell.
So I'm actually not a nostalgic person at all, except for I think things with my kids, for instance. I don't think I'm nostalgic about most things. I'm kind of like to move ahead. So I always find nostalgia to be interesting. Like even with Glitch, right? Also built and grew it. I have not sat down till very recently and actually thought about what that has meant, what I miss. Because it's always been about, okay, where is this kind of going? So I think writing the book became a process of me understanding nostalgia, because it was never a core part of how I am. I value it a lot more. I try to do it a lot. Now it comes to me a lot more. I think it's also an age thing.
Lovely. Thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything, any advice on love that you would like to leave us with?
I think the best advice I can give on love is that don't make it about you. I feel that oftentimes we misconstrue relationships and love as something that is giving something to you. But if you treat it as something that you're giving to someone else, that circles back to you in ways which you don't expect, and which kind of also like in a good way. But oftentimes love goes off when you make it so much more about yourself. It's that whole "it's not you, it's me" scenario, right? Which used to be my constant way of breaking up. But the less you do of that, the more you find love. And ritualize those small things you can do to kind of make sure that you're giving something or you're doing something together. And it could be not doing anything but being together, right? You got to build those things in.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is fabulous. Hey guys, smash that bell icon, hit subscribe to Chalchitra Talks. Not talkies, it's talks. Like I have made the mistake of saying many times, and catch all the interesting content they make. I'm also in some of them.